drive these implementations to successful outcomes. So one of the key things that we do that's interwoven in our process is making sure they are planning and architecting an implementation project that's going to deliver the business results. And so we'll get into, I think, a little bit more detail in a bit.
Yeah, so by the time we get to selection, it sounds like you've already been embedded for a significant amount of time with these customers.
That's right.
Yeah. And so, Eric, when you're looking at it from your perspective, I'm guessing you do a lot of those things as well. But third stage has kind of moved the needle in regards to social media and its usage. And it's kind of getting some more, arm out there with some of that data and some of that information you're putting out. Tell us about how successful you've been using that.
Well, when I started the company in 2018, that was the sole source of incoming leads was YouTube and LinkedIn. Those are the two primary channels. So putting content out there that was agnostic, disruptive. Sometimes I say things in this content where it's not popular, it's not mainstream thinking, but it's the way I see the world. And so we would just put this content out there, and the algorithms would pick it up, and it would get pushed out to people that would then reach out to us and contact us saying they wanted help with their selection process or their overall implementation. So it's been highly effective, and it's also been a good way for us to stay on top of trends in the industry, understanding what the different vendors are doing, understanding the roadmaps, because as content creators as well, we want to make sure that we're being accurate and accurately reflecting where the vendors are headed.
Interestingly enough, since I've been a participant on one of your channels and seen myself and had some reach out, I've seen some of that firsthand, right? And some of that reach that we've gotten into the market has been a little bit further. Some previous clients I've had reached out to me like, hey, I saw you on Eric Kimberly's page. You must be doing something well. Appreciate that. So now that we know what we're doing and what our firms kind of do, talk about what we do when we look at prospective clients and ones that we've just closed and that initial conversation. What kind of things do you do in order to get prepped for that? What kind of tools you use? What kind of software packages or things you get on the internet that you use in order to have those conversations? What would you first?
Well, first of all, a lot like Jonathan and PEMCO, we generally first understand what the current situation is. What is this company doing today? What's made them successful? How have they grown and gotten where they are today? It's really easy to sort of forget about that and just look to the future, which I think is software vendors, sometimes that's what is the line of thinking. But for us, it's important to understand how they got to where they are, what their strengths are, and what they're trying to improve, and why they're going through this process. Why are they considering Epicor? Why are they considering Epicor's competitors? And so really just understanding that first and foremost and helping clients prioritize so they don't get caught up in analysis paralysis. They don't try to boil the ocean. They don't try to find that perfect solution that doesn't exist. They're focused on the things that are most important to them as an organization strategically. So that's what we do to start. It really has nothing to do with Epicor or even the tools that we use. It's more just understanding the business of the client. Once we do that, then we bring in tools that we use. So we've got our own internal knowledge base of experience having helped implement Epicor products as well as other systems. But we also use technology evaluation centers. We license their technology to use that as part of our selection process. We've got that quantitative data set to augment our qualitative experience. And then obviously the RFP process is a big part of it as well, just making sure we get a tailored solution for the client.
So you guys are already engaged, but what do you do when they initially call? How do you know who you're talking to? How do you know it might not be somebody who's tasked to do this and just as a tick list item, or who actually is substantially making change? How do you profile that account prior to you actually legitimately engaging? Because obviously, is it LinkedIn that you'd use? Do you look at their social media histories? How do you know if you're working with somebody who's legit and whether they're there to make change or just somebody in purchasing?
I'm going to jump in here because from a private equity perspective, I first look at who owns who, right? I want to know, from that private equity entity, all the portfolios that sit there, what their kind of lean is, whether or not it's manufacturing, whether or not they invest a lot in distribution, and then see, how long they've been held, when they can be up for sale, et cetera. So I want to get a lot of that information about what kind of M&A related activity could be on the horizon for that entity. So just want to jump in with that. Go ahead.
No, I think that's a great point.
Yeah, when we get started, so this is before we're engaged, we're talking about how do we build a profile of a client, a potential client, how do we make sure we're talking to the right people. So when we're selling our services, one of the things we have to think about is what we're selling and to whom. We're talking about a strategic digital transformation project. So in some cases, the folks who are reaching out to us we know are going to perhaps report up into someone, may not move the needle. Sometimes we get that, but we've got to find a way to talk to the right people in the organization. So we are building that profile, and yes, we have LinkedIn, we have other tools to build out the relationship map. I was just in a session not too long ago where the team was doing that for strategic accounts, not that dissimilar. So if it's private equity owned, if it's corporate owned, who are the key decision makers, who do we have connections with in the C-suite. We try to build out a preliminary view of the buying committee and try to open up doors in various ways. We have certain automation tools that we're leveraging to help us do that, so we can do it at scale as opposed to one-off. And then when we get bites, then we can kind of engage in a little bit more of a personal manner. But the goal is to make sure that when we're invited in for a sales presentation to present the methodology, people already have a sense of how we can help them. Yes, it's a little bit about us, but it's also, or I'd say it's probably more about them and understanding their pain points and their key drivers, at least at a very, very high level. And if we can establish that rapport, it's a real kind of breakdown of barriers to having a better discussion about their pain points, for them to open up a little bit more. And the more they can open up with us, the more we can listen up front, the more we can come in and build a tailored proposal. And that's really, really important, because we're not selling widgets like perhaps they might be doing. We're selling a service.
Eric, is there anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would add too, in addition to what John said, which were great points, I would also add that we also look at the digital maturity of the organization too. We want to understand just sort of where they at technologically. Are they on an older version of Epicor, or are they using an old green screen homegrown system? Not that that really changes a lot in terms of how we approach it, but it does approach or change or influence how they select software and what you can expect from a risk perspective in the implementation. So we do look at that piece of it. We also look at what experience the organization has going through these sorts of projects in the past. I used to think the opposite of this, but having done this for a while now, I find that the scariest client to me is the one that hasn't been through this before. They just don't have any battle wounds. They've never been burned before, even if it's individually at a previous company. If you have a team that's green and has never been through it, it's just really hard to educate them on what we see all the time and what you've seen in your consulting career. And so that part is important too.
Well, and just to add to that too, there's also some of that buying dynamic behavior relative to micro vertical. Like med device, they want a demo within, from our perspective, once we see them, they want a demo within that week, and everybody's got advanced degrees, and it's fast. Whereas you might be dealing with an industrial manufacturer, and they're comfortable with, scheduling and discovery, but there's some culturalisms relative to the micro vertical that also can be incorporated.